The night I found out my CEO had arranged my blind date, my hands wouldn't stop shaking. I had survived layoffs, sleepless nights, and the humiliation of starting over at 34 but nothing prepared me for walking into that quiet waterfront restaurant in Seattle, Washington, only to realize the woman sitting at the table wasn't a stranger at all. She was my boss' daughter. Before we go any further, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and the idea that love can show up when you least expect it, take a moment to like this video, comment where you're watching from, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe to the channel. Stories like this remind us that life can surprise us in the most beautiful ways. My name is Michael Carter, and 2 years ago, my life was a wreckage I was still trying to crawl out of. After my father passed away unexpectedly, I left my small hometown in Ohio and moved to Seattle for a fresh start. I landed a mid-level operations job at a fast-growing tech company led by Lawson, a woman known in the industry for being sharp, intimidating, and relentlessly driven. She was the kind of CEO who remembered every number in a quarterly report but rarely smiled in meetings. To me, she was both terrifying and inspiring. Work became my sanctuary. I poured everything into it because I had nothing else. My long-term relationship had ended months before my move. Most nights, I ate takeout alone in my apartment overlooking Elliott Bay, listening to the hum of traffic and wondering if I'd made the right choices. I convinced myself that success would fill the emptiness. It didn't. Rebecca noticed my dedication. She began assigning me high-responsibility projects, trusting me with sensitive negotiations. Our conversations stayed professional, but there was a quiet respect between us. She once told me I reminded her of someone who hadn't yet learned how valuable he was. I didn't know what she meant at the time. One Friday afternoon, she called me into her office. The skyline glowed behind her floor-to-ceiling windows. She wasn't holding a file or reviewing reports. Instead, she looked almost thoughtful. She told me she believed I worked too much, that I needed balance, that sometimes the right person could change everything. I assumed it was a generic leadership speech until she mentioned she knew someone remarkable and thought we might get along. Before I could politely decline, she had already arranged a reservation. It felt inappropriate, risky, but she assured me it was casual and insisted I deserved happiness outside conference rooms. I agreed, partly out of curiosity, partly because I hadn't been on a real date in over a year. The restaurant overlooked Puget Sound, candles flickering against tall glass windows. I arrived early, nerves coiling in my stomach. When the hostess led me to the table, I saw her. Sophia Lawson. I had seen her photo once on Rebecca's desk. Sophia wasn't involved in the company, but there had been a framed picture of the two of them at what looked like a charity gala. The resemblance was unmistakable, the same sharp eyes, though Sophia's carried warmth instead of steel. For a moment, I considered walking out, but she stood up when she saw me, equally stunned. The silence between us was heavy, filled with unspoken questions. Had her mother planned this? Did she know who I was? Was this some strange test? As the evening unfolded, the tension slowly melted into conversation. Sophia wasn't anything like the corporate world I lived in. She worked as a pediatric nurse at a local hospital. Her days were filled with fragile lives and grateful parents. She spoke about children battling illnesses with courage that humbled her. She laughed easily, a soft contrast to her mother's commanding presence. She admitted she had no idea I worked for Rebecca until she saw me. Her mother had simply described me as a good man who forgets he deserves joy. Hearing that sent a strange ache through my chest. The date should have felt awkward. Instead, it felt real, but reality came crashing back the next morning. I woke up to an email from HR reminding employees about policies regarding personal relationships within the company. My heart pounded. Had someone seen us? Was Rebecca reconsidering her decision? I spent the weekend in anxious limbo. On Monday, Rebecca called me in again. Her expression was unreadable. She told me she valued professionalism above all else, that if things with Sophia were to continue, my integrity mattered more than my position. There was no threat in her voice, only a challenge. She wanted to know if I was serious about her daughter or if this was a casual distraction. It was the first time I saw not a CEO, but a mother. I admitted I didn't know where things would lead, but I respected Sophia deeply. I wasn't interested in games. Rebecca studied me in silence, then nodded once. She said something you'll never forget. Success in business is measured in numbers, but success in life is measured in who stands beside you when the numbers disappear. The weeks that followed weren't easy. Office whispers started. A few colleagues hinted that I was climbing the ladder for the wrong reasons. Every achievement suddenly felt scrutinized. I worked twice as hard to prove I earned my place. The pressure mounted, and I began questioning whether pursuing Sophia was worth risking everything I had rebuilt. Sophia felt it too. She worried about being the reason my reputation suffered. There were nights we sat in her small apartment, overlooking a quiet street lined with maple trees, discussing whether love should demand sacrifice of ambition. She told me she had grown up watching her mother choose work over everything else. She didn't want to be the reason someone else did the same. One evening, after a brutal week of corporate politics, I nearly ended it. Not because I didn't care, but because I did. I thought walking away would protect us both. But as I stood outside her door, rain soaking through my jacket, I realized I was about to repeat the same mistake ID made in my past running when things became complicated. Instead, I chose honesty. I told her I was scared. Scared of losing my job. Scared of failing. Scared of not being enough for someone whose mother built an empire. Sophia listened, then told me she didn't need an empire. She needed a partner who stayed. That night changed everything. We decided to set boundaries. At work, we were strictly professional. Outside of it, we built something separate from boardrooms and quarterly targets. Slowly, the gossip faded as my performance spoke for itself. Rebecca never showed favoritism. In fact, she was tougher on me than ever. But I began to understand her better. Beneath her formidable exterior was a woman who had sacrificed relationships for ambition and didn't want her daughter to repeat that pattern. Months passed. I was offered a promotion that would require relocating to the company's new branch in Chicago. It was the opportunity I had dreamed of: more responsibility, higher pay, greater visibility. But it meant leaving Seattle, leaving Sophia. The old version of me would have accepted without hesitation. This time, I hesitated. I met Rebecca in her office one last time before giving my answer. She didn't advise me. She simply asked what kind of life I wanted when I was 70 years old. Would I remember the titles or the people? That question haunted me for days. In the end, I declined the relocation. Instead, I proposed expanding my role remotely while remaining in Seattle. It was a risk, but it showed where my priorities lay. To my surprise, the board approved it. They valued my contributions enough to compromise. The night I told Sophia, she cried not because I chose her over my career, but because I found a way to choose both without losing myself. Before I share how this story ends, I want to ask you something deeply personal. If this story is touching your heart, if you've ever faced a choice between ambition and love, take a moment to like this video, comment your thoughts, and share it with someone who needs courage. And please, just before the ending, comment the word hope if you believe that love and integrity can coexist. A year later, on a breezy evening by the water, where our first date had begun, I asked Sophia to marry me. There were no dramatic speeches, no grand audience, just the quiet rhythm of waves and the city lights shimmering behind us. She said yes with tears in her eyes and laughter in her voice. At our wedding, Rebecca gave a toast that surprised everyone. She admitted she had arranged that blind date not as a test, but as an act of faith. She had seen something in both of USA's shared resilience, a hunger for meaning beyond achievement. She said sometimes leadership isn't about controlling outcomes, but about creating opportunities for connection. Looking around the room, I realized how close I had come to walking away from all of it. From the risk, from the vulnerability, from the possibility of joy. Life doesn't always present love wrapped in perfection. Sometimes it arrives disguised as a complication, a professional hazard, a blind date arranged by your intimidating CEO. But if you're brave enough to stay, to choose honesty over fear, you might just discover that the most unexpected arrangements lead to the most extraordinary futures. And if this story moved you, Yvonne, a little, please engage with this video, share it with someone who needs to believe in second chances, and subscribe for more stories that remind us that even in boardrooms and broken seasons, love can still find its way home.